Hello YouTube! So, a couple of days ago I uploaded a video in which I had a conversation about Zen and skepticism. It's a very interesting conversation. You should go and check it out, at least if you're interested in that topic. But I wanted to revisit it because, well, I had some further thoughts. You know, in the course of that conversation, I changed my mind about something, and I think I was too quick to do that. So I'm just going to, explain what my position was, explain why I changed my mind, and then I'm going to say why I might have made an error in conceding so quickly. So yeah, the topic is skepticism, and I should first of all clarify that when I say skepticism, what I have in mind here is radical skepticism, where this involves total suspension of judgment. So we're not talking about, for instance, skepticism of the external world, where, we might say believe various propositions about one's own mind, or believe certain epistemological principles, but just be skeptical that there's actually a world out there. We're not talking about specifically inductive skepticism, etc. Right? The skepticism that we have in mind here is total suspension of judgment. And the position that I had held was, this seems to me to be psychologically impossible. I don't think, or rather, to clarify, it seems to me to be psychologically impossible for anybody to actually endorse this, for anybody to actually suspend judgment about everything. So yeah, I mean, why did I think this? Well, when I think about what a belief is, right? What is belief? What I have in mind is that it simply amounts to accepting that a proposition is true, or we don't even necessarily have to frame it in terms of propositions. We could just say, accepting some sort of representation of the way the world is. For an example, I guess, of suspension of judgment, take the topic, did the universe pop into existence, or has it existed forever? So on this question, I have absolutely no idea. I couldn't even make a guess. I mean, if I had to make a guess, it would literally just be, it would just be a guess. Like I don't have even an intuition one way or the other. There's just nothing that moves me to one position or the other on that question. Right. So on that question, I think that I'm in a state of genuine suspension of judgment. I'm not accepting either of these. I'm not even inclined towards either of these options. And so yeah, that's suspension of judgment. And the issue that I had with this, with the idea that one can, the idea that one can suspend judgment just about everything is, well, okay then, why do you, why are you doing the things that you do? So, if I'm at the top of a, 50-story building, why do I take the stairs rather than jump out the window? Well, it's because I'm not just suspending judgment about the fact that jumping out the window will kill me. I mean, look, it may not be the case that I don't have to be certain that jumping out the window will kill me. I don't even have to be particularly confident that jumping out the window will kill me. But, yeah, I mean, if you really just have no idea, right? Like, let's say you're at the top of the building and you have just no idea whether or not jumping out the window will kill you, then it seems like that would be a better option than taking the stairs. I mean, it would be faster. Except, of course, you can't even say that, because if you're suspending judgment, then, you're going to have... If you're suspending judgment on everything, you'd have no idea whether going out the window would be faster. But, you see the point. This is a sort of classic objection that, lots of people have made, and I'm aware that there's a long history of responses to it, but, I've never found them particularly convincing. It seems just... I can't make sense of what this psychological state of total suspension of judgment is supposed to be like. Having said that, I've always loved skepticism. I love it as a challenge, because the challenge is that there are various approaches to epistemology that entail skepticism. And so skepticism is a challenge to be resisted. So if you think about, say, traditional foundationalism, where we're trying to build up knowledge on foundations that are indubitable, well, it turns out there are no indubitable foundations, and even if there were such indubitable foundations, there's like no way of building the rest of our knowledge upon them. So if you accept that approach to epistemology, you end up, you're going to end up being condemned to skepticism. But like, okay, that's not an acceptable option. So it looks like we're going to have to think of a different way of approaching epistemology so that we can avoid this consequence. So it's a serious challenge, but it's a consequence to be avoided, and that's where I find it interesting. Now, so what I had usually encountered when I spoke to skeptics, and I mean, I've encountered this a lot, I've spoken to lots of people who claim to be skeptics, when you put this problem to them, when you say, well, like, okay, so why do you take the stairs rather than just jump out the window? What the usual move is to try to kind of replace belief with other types of propositional attitudes. So I've had a lot of skeptics who will say, well, you don't need to believe that jumping out the window will kill you. You can suspect that jumping out the window will kill you, or you can guess that jumping out the window will kill you. And that kind of move I have always found, kind of annoying. Like it seems to me that all you're doing is just like avoiding the word belief at this point. Because look, you're still representing the world in a particular way. You're not actually suspending judgment, right? Okay, maybe you don't want to call your judgments beliefs, right? But when you kind of represent the world in a particular way, when you're like representing the world in such a way that, you're taking it that jumping out the window will kill you, and then, you act on that so that you take the stairs rather than jump out the window, you're still kind of holding this like positive attitude towards a proposition. You're still using it, or maybe not even a proposition. Again, we maybe want to avoid framing it in propositional terms, but there's still some sort of representation of the world that you're accepting. And so, like moving to, so when the skeptic sort of says, okay, we have suspicions, guesses, whatever else, that feels to me like at the end of the day, you're making the same distinctions I'm making, but you're just not using the same language, right? You just have a phobia of the word belief. So that's not a philosophically interesting position to me. I don't know. Maybe some people find that interesting. I don't. And it seems, as in addition, that it kind of undermines the genuine challenge of skepticism. Because skepticism, as I say, poses a genuine and interesting challenge. But if all skepticism amounts to for you is a kind of phobia of the word belief, well, that's not an interesting challenge. That maybe tells us something interesting about your psychology, but it's not an epistemological challenge. The sort of response that I'd usually encountered, where the idea is that, well, we won't talk about beliefs, we'll talk about suspicions, guesses, whatever else. I haven't changed my mind about that. I still do not find this to be a particularly interesting or compelling position. I don't think it really answers the kind of challenge of, well, okay, how are you accounting for your action from a position of suspension of judgment? Because you're not actually suspending judgment. I feel like I'm just kind of really rambling here. I'm so terrible at talking off the top of my head. Does this even make any sense? Because I actually don't I can't put my thoughts into words. It's really annoying. I'm really trying, and I'm just terrible at this. So I'm now going to go on maybe a little bit of a tangent where I complain about my own inability to express myself when I'm talking off the top of my head. It's so frustrating. I'm pretty sure, I can't remember exactly what it was that I said back then. I'm pretty sure that it's really crappy, and like I'm going to get loads of people in the comments kind of pointing out that what I just said was a really bad argument, but I don't think it's that bad. I think that it's the way that I expressed it was bad, but there's an important point there, and there's part of me that wants to rephrase that point, and say it again, you know, in a better way. But I mean, I know that if I was to try to say it again, it wouldn't be any better, and I'd just, you know, be repeating myself. Oh man, this is so annoying. Hopefully, though, you can kind of see my perspective, right? I mean, hopefully I've done something to communicate the kind of perspective that I was coming at this discussion of skepticism from. Was that right? I can't remember how I even started that sentence. See, I'm just not making any sense. But, you know, I've said something, and now I'm going to move on to the next thing. So that's the background here, okay? And then I had this conversation about Zen and skepticism. Now, the interesting thing about Zen skepticism, and this is why I said, well, maybe I've changed my mind. Because remember, so the original claim is, well, this doesn't seem to be psychologically possible. And the issue, the problem with respect to psychological possibility is, like beliefs govern action, right? So if you're just suspending judgment about everything, then, you know, how are you making sense of performing any actions? Okay, so that's the problem, right? So then we have this conversation about Zen and skepticism. What's interesting about the Zen skeptic is that the issue is it's no longer framed in terms of propositions, right? One of the things that we talked about when we had this conversation was washing dishes, right? And so I kind of again said, all right, but like why are you washing dishes, right? I mean, if you're suspending judgment about everything, then there's going to be just like, you know, you're going to have no reason for thinking that when you pick up a dish, that, you know, you'll actually be able to pick it up, or that it will just shatter, or that it will explode and destroy the earth. You know, like if you're really suspending judgment on anything, then you just have no idea, right? There's going to be no basis on which you can act. But the Zen skeptic just doesn't conceive of anything in terms of washing dishes. And, you know, the Zen skeptic, right, doesn't make this move where they're like, oh, well, you know, I can suspect that picking up the dish will be perfectly safe, right? Or I can guess that picking up the dish will be perfectly safe. There is no dish, right? There's nothing that is conceived of as a dish, nor is there any kind of action of picking up the dish, nor is there even a self that is distinct from other things. You know, so there's this kind of like lack of conceptualization, and so, you know, there are no beliefs, but there are also no actions, and so on. Now, I accepted this as a description of what the experience is like from the inside, and the reason why I accepted that is because, you know, at the end of the day, I do put some weight on other people's testimony. If I think that somebody is expressing what they take to be the case, and they seem to be, you know, reliable and honest and so on, then, you know, I will trust that, at least as a description of their own experience, right? I mean, it's not. I mean, how can I? I can't see things from other people's points of view, so, you know, I just accept that. And in that case, given the way the experience was described to me, and given that it came from somebody who seemed to be honest and straightforward and so on, like, I just have to accept that, okay, yeah, total suspension of judgment is indeed possible. But I'm not sure that this is really, like, I'm not sure that this is actually a challenge to my position, because, of course, like I've kind of made this point that, well, all right, how do you, like, how do I, maybe I should put it in like third person terms. It's like, all right, how am I supposed to make sense of, you know, your activity of washing dishes if I'm not to attribute any kind of judgment to you, right? But then what the Zen skeptic is saying is, you know, like they're not framing anything in terms of washing dishes, right? And you know, again, it's not that they have suspicions or guesses that certain things will happen, right? They're not performing actions. In fact, I guess they're not really even having experience in anything like the way I would conceive of experience. Even to talk of experience versus things that are not experienced, I guess presupposes distinctions that do not exist in the mystical state. So yeah, I don't know if this is really a counterexample to the thesis, right? Because the claim is, right, how do I make sense of you washing dishes, right, without attributing certain judgments to you? And their point is that, well, that whole framework needs to go. So it's not like we have a case where somebody is washing dishes, but they are doing it having like total suspension of judgment. That's not what's being claimed, not even by the Zen skeptic. Yeah, so that's the key point, right? We don't have a counterexample where we have a person washing dishes, but that person has suspended judgment. Because as far as the Zen skeptic is concerned, there is no person, there are no dishes. Or maybe there are. I mean, like, one of the points that was made is that the state of Zen skepticism is kind of like trivialism, where all propositions are taken to be true. So it's like everything is false and everything is true, and there's suspension of judgment on everything as well. So, even trying to put this in sort of normal language doesn't make sense. So that's why I now feel like I was maybe too quick to concede the point, because even if I recognise, so like I can recognise that maybe there is this whole other way of conceiving things, or it's not even a matter of conceiving things. Like, I can't even put it into words. Maybe there is something, right, accessible to me that would overthrow the way that I'm thinking about the world and the way that I'm conceiving of the world. Maybe there is, but obviously, I mean, I haven't accessed that yet, right? I am still at the moment, stuck in the position of somebody who has to talk about people and actions and beliefs and judgments and so on. And within that framework, I don't know how much of a challenge, like within this framework, how much of a challenge the Zen skeptic poses. Does that make sense? Again, I'm not sure if this does make sense. Oh man, this is a terrible video. I mean, I suppose the thing is, look, right, the mystical state, as was described, is interesting, but at the moment incomprehensible to me. I mean, this is one of the problems I had with the conversation. It was a very difficult conversation for me because, something is being described that, I mean, like, I just have no, like, I don't know what is being talked about. It's incomprehensible. And so I can acknowledge that there are forms of experience that are incomprehensible to me, but then until I have them myself, like, I'm stuck. I got to work with what I've got, So yeah. So I'm just not sure what. I guess it's kind of like, right, if imagine this, so suppose that there's somebody speaking a language that I just don't understand, and then I talk to somebody else who speaks my language, speaks English, and this other person, I take them to be, again, honest, reliable, straightforward, etc., right? They're somebody that I can trust. And they say that they do understand this other language, but they can't translate it into my language, right? Like, it's not going to be accessible to me in the normal way, like, of translation into my language. Then I don't know what I can do with that. It's like claims that are made in that language. You can say that there are certain claims made in that language that challenge my views and that show me that I'm wrong. But I have no access to that language, so I don't really know. I don't know what I can do with that information. So yeah. uh, I think that's all I had to talk about, really. Just some reflections, which were probably rambling and didn't make a lot of sense. Should I upload this? I'm not sure. How long is this? How long have I? Right, okay, 20 minutes. I've just done 20 minutes talking to the camera. I should probably upload it. You know, I still feel like I feel like I take skepticism way more seriously than self-proclaimed skeptics do, to be honest. Like, because if I accepted skepticism, I would just stop, you know? Like, I would stop asserting things. I would stop making arguments. Like, I mean, after all, if you suspend judgment on everything, then you're not making the judgment that anybody disagrees with you. You're not making the judgment that asserting or creating certain sounds with your mouth would communicate anything to anybody else, right? And I feel like if I was to come to that position, if I was to hold that position, like, I would just stop. And if you're not just stopping, it's like, it's really hard for me to take you seriously when you claim that you're suspending judgment. I mean, again, like, when it comes to the whole Zen skepticism thing, you know, I have to, right? This is being communicated by agents that seem reliable, right? So I have no choice. I have to trust that. But even so, it's like, yeah, if I came to suspend judgment, I think I would do it properly, and I would just, you know, I wouldn't necessarily just stop, but my behaviour would become totally, like, random and incomprehensible to other people. That would be what would happen, or maybe not. I don't know. I'm going to stop this video now. If you have actually watched all of this, I'm sorry, because that was probably a waste of time. And I'm now going to go away and what the hell am I doing? This is just awful. Should I upload this? Can I be bothered to re-record it? No, I can't. I'm going to upload it as it is. And you know what? If you've chosen to watch the whole thing, then that's on you, okay? You're the one. You don't criticize me for bad content. You should be criticizing yourself for bothering to watch the whole thing, okay? Goodbye.